And a very good morning to Harry Atherton,
Good,
who
good morning to you, Keith. Yeah.
have you just got one leg now, Harry?
Oh no, it's just got a foot in bandages, but I have a beautiful nurse comes every day to change the bandages. So it's there's a
Oh, well,
this
real bonuses then.
hidden reward. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Are you in pain?
Not at all, not at all. No, I don't feel any pain at all. My extremities, I think my nervous system went dead a few years ago, and my extremities, which include my head, there's
Uh,
no sign of life whatsoever in the brain. So I mean, I don't feel any pain. Um,
that's good. Well, Harry, we this month is where we're going to change our system. Mirador Television, under that name, is now under Teddy Wormsley, and he is doing just strictly local stuff in Lewis.
mhm.
Whereas we will have a blog in which we continue with our international themes and so on. So nothing will change for you.
Mhm.
You will do your usual expert analysis of what's going on. And I noticed yesterday or the day before yesterday that Marine Le Pen has just been let out of jail or is now she's come back fighting and saying, I will run for the presidency. What's happening there? What's happening in France?
Well, in fact, what has happened is her punishment has been reduced, which means that she will be freed of that obligation, well, punishment, before the presidential elections. So she will be allowed to run. So she's declared that she will run, and she'll throw a hat in the ring as soon as the current punishment period runs out, which I think is in about April of next year, which is in plenty of time for the presidential elections. Had she not run, of course, her deputy, Jordan Bardella, would have stood in, and he's even more popular than she is. So there's a very strong possibility that there will be, I won't say a landslide, but a very strong move to the right in France. And you can almost make a comparison with Nigel Farage in Britain. I think there's a popular movement towards right-wing government in both countries, and she is heading that. And of course, she's managed to remove the stigma of her father, who was seen extreme right, and she's moved more to the centre. But bearing in mind, of course, the centre of politics in France is already well to the left. The centre of politics in Britain is pretty much in the middle. The centre of politics in America, for instance, is very much to the right. So when you're talking about right of centre, it depends on where the centre is in each individual country.
Yes.
So
How would you assess it globally? The swings to left, right, and centre.
oh, I think we're moving towards a polarization of positions, and that's going to be it's going to play out in the French elections, because if, for instance, the standard bearer of the left in France turns out to be Mélenchon, who is a leader of an extreme left party, La France Insoumise, then I think she'll get in easily, very easily. She'd win by, I think, 77% of the vote is what the polls are saying.
Yeah.
So, and that sort of thing is happening all over the world. There's a polarization of politics. Possible exception being Canada, our former home and native land. Whereas surprisingly, it's remained pretty middle of the road with a liberal government. But I do see a tendency to the right in Germany, and certainly in the Baltic states and in Central Europe, and France is an example. And of course, depending on how this Farage saga plays out in Britain, whether Britain moves to the right, it's quite a strong possibility. It's a tendency. It's a swing that happens throughout history, and I think it will lead to some fairly dramatic changes within the period of the present British government, Labour government in Britain. I think we're going to see changes before that government runs its term, um, and um, and the and certainly with the presidential elections coming up in France in 27 next year, we'll see the result of that here in France.
Is the mathematics in my mind have not been made? Is we've only got about 2 years left of the present government before we have to have an election in England. Isn't that correct?
Well, there are 3 years left to run in
3 years.
Britain.
Yeah.
3 years left to run in Britain. But I think change will be forced upon Britain, either economically or politically, between now and the end of that mandate. It all depends on how Burnham approaches things. He's appeared to be pretty middle of the road, not to spook anybody yet. After all, he is not yet Prime Minister.
No.
And so he's got to retain the support of the backbenchers. And the backbenchers will not tolerate any intrusion, any limiting on the welfare system. And the welfare system will put, growing as it is, like Topsy, will put Britain into serious financial problems well before the Labour government mandate runs out. I think it's maybe got 6 months to a year to go before external forces such as the International Monetary Fund or others step in and order Britain to put its house in order.
Yes, there is quite a bit of speculation about where your favourite man, Mr. Miliband, is going to sit in this government. He's obviously been making overtures to the new group. Where do you think he'll end up?
Well, again, this depends on what Burnham does. He's been particularly silent about who he was going to put into such a key position as Chancellor. And it would be catastrophic if he puts Miliband in. That would sink him within 6 months. It would seem to me that Miliband is a bit of an ideological nutcase. And what Burnham has got to do is to bring a little bit of reason back into governance and get rid of the net zero thing. So if he puts a net zero fanatic in charge of the Treasury, it's curtains. I mean, he wouldn't. It would fail miserably. Now, he's an old-time buddy of Miliband. They came up the same route together way back when as parliamentary assistants, and they were very good friends, and apparently they've remained good friends to this date. But it depends what sort of a political animal Burnham is. If he wants to succeed in his premiership, he certainly would not appoint Miliband as into such a key position. In fact, he would not even leave him in the present position he's in, because net zero has come to mean an absolute financial disaster for Britain, pushing up electricity prices, highest in the developed world by a large margin, and seriously impeding Britain's financial recovery. So he may, I don't know, think of some harmless position to put him in. Difficult to say. His Miliband's brother, David, is scheduled, I think, to become Foreign Secretary again, a position he's previously held. Otherwise, that would have been a nice plum job for Ed Miliband to take on. But no, I really can't think Burnham will sacrifice his potential by appointing Miliband as Chancellor of the Exchequer. It would be catastrophic if he did.
Now, Kelly Belloc has started to make a few headlines. And how do you read her chances of getting the Conservative Party back on track? And how do you read the new potential Prime Minister as Prime Minister material?
Well, I think first, answer your first part of the question, Badenoch, Kenny Badenoch has been doing an amazing job in moving the Conservative Party, which had gone fairly left-wing, moving it back into a proper Conservative position. I won't say particularly right-wing as yet, but that's as a counter-reaction to the Farage influence, the Reform influence, and so I do see her as being potentially a very influential figure in British politics. I think it's going to be a while that the Conservative Party spends in the wilderness after it's messed up the many years of poor governance in Britain. But I think she's doing a very sound job, and so I think she'll be in position for quite some time, and I think you'll see a resurgence of the Conservative Party. I wouldn't write them off by any measure of means.
No. If anything, the big rival would have been Farage, but he's having his own problems. How serious do you think those problems are?
Well, it's an interesting question because, on the one hand, the fact that the major parties are not going to run any candidates against him in Clacton is going to make a little bit of a farce of this artificial by-election. But at the same time, they've got to be careful because what with refuge and the Conservatives and Labour deciding not to run candidates, it proves that there is an establishment conspiracy against Farage.
Yeah.
You don't. I mean, the phones must have been red hot buzzing between these people, supposed enemies, but they all got their act together very quickly to decide that they wouldn't run candidates. So there's proof, blatant proof, that there is a conspiracy against Farage. Now, if we can play that to his advantage, so much the better. Whatever you think of Farage, he has changed the face of British politics and is trying to bring it back on track. And he does have a huge following. Whether it's enough to give him a majority government, whether Reform is ready in depth with the necessary programs and qualities in its leadership to run the country, that's a question. It's got to be addressed. But obviously, I mean, in the context of Labour certainly weren't ready to run the country, and they're running, and with Starmer and company, they're running it into the ground in the space of 2 years. So certainly, Reform wouldn't do any worse than Labour. But there is a very strong swell of ground root opinion in favour of Farage. And it's not Farage the man, it's the ideas that he puts forward. And as long as he doesn't dilute those ideas and wrenches back to Britain on track and make Britons proud to be British again, then I think he's got a very good chance.
It is interesting. I always measure how important and what impact somebody will have on the basis of how does the establishment react. And they certainly run for cover the moment that he goes boo. So I do think that you're right. I think that his popularity, whether it's for the idea or whether it's for the man, is there. And he's going to remain a reasonable power, while the others faff around a little bit.
Indeed. And when we talk about the establishment, what do we really mean by that? I mean, the establishment is pretty much the flag carrier for the status quo, which means this enormous civil service, which is, as in a television program, Yes, Minister, it's impossible to budge. I mean, they really do run the country, and and they thwart any effort by elected representatives to govern the country. So that television program was remarkably near the truth. It cut right to the bone. And so if we see that as the establishment and the way of doing things, and they say that if you want to, the captain of an aircraft carrier, if he wants to turn the ship around, it takes him 5 miles before the ship can turn around. By the time he gives the order, it's commuted to get to the engine room and to the rudder staff and all the rest of it. Well, it's the same with big government. So that, in a sense, that's a definition of the establishment. And anybody, unless they sweep clean with a new broom, they're going to run into that sort of an obstacle, a governance obstacle. So I think the establishment is going to continue to run the country regardless for at least another 5 miles.
Indeed, and it'll be very interesting to see what happens in East Sussex County Council, because they've got a new leader who is reform.
Mm-hmm.
And there is no question. I mean, I've had rather more intimate dealings with the East Sussex County Council,
mm-hmm.
and I would say that Boris Johnson's view that it's a root and branch reform that's needed, right throughout all levels of governance, is that most certainly the county council here is an absolute reflection of Westminster. So you've got a really very tough job to get change throughout the country.
Mm-hmm. Well, in terms of local government, I mean, when you're talking about East Sussex, we're getting down into pretty local government level there. The devolution, or the attempt to give more authority to the regions and to the smaller political units, could only help people like the East Sussex Council. I mean, Burnham wants to ensure that the mayors have greater policy to right to raise taxes, to institute programs that are relevant to their own areas of jurisdiction. So this could only help people. Smaller political units like the East Sussex Council.
The only thing that I worry about is I think that as we go down in the senior levels of governance, that the competence goes with it. So you'll have a regional mayor dealing with raising taxes and that sort of thing, who actually is far more incompetent than the people in Whitehall, and that says something.
Well, this is it, and one of the problems with local government, do you have people who know their local area well, and they're probably pretty bright people, but they haven't got the global vision or the nationwide vision to run a country, and so they would see things in isolation, and that's one of the big problems with devolution. I cannot think for 1 second that devolution in Britain, the handing of power to Scotland, to Wales and others, has been a success. It's caused serious regional problems, and somebody with a broader vision for the benefit of the whole nation to try and equalize, yes, but not to simply make different regions competitive with each other because they're trying to grab more of the national pie. So I would think that Scottish devolution and Welsh devolution certainly has been a monstrous failure. And so whether we need more of that down to the major city level like Manchester or other major conurbations, I'm not sure. It would be a good thing. I think it's been proved to have failed.
Yes, indeed. I couldn't agree more. You don't hear quite the same level of, oh gosh, this has failed and we should look at it again at the local level as you do at the national level, unfortunately.
Well, this is it. And in Britain, for all of this so-called division, economic division, north and south, it's a small country. I mean, you can get from one end to the other in 5 minutes on foot, as it were. So there shouldn't be this huge geographical discrepancy, which is painted as something, in competitive terms, as I say, the north versus the south, or Wales needing its special hegemony, or Scotland. I think we're too small a country. We central government is this what's the distance real in terms of time and travel between Manchester and London? I mean, it's nothing at all. I mean, it's not like some huge countries which are spread around with such enormous geographic disparities. Taking it back to our native country, Canada. I mean, we can you think trying to run Canada with its various varied geography? I mean. Goodness me, it takes you 10 hours to fly across Canada.
Yes.
Takes you 1 hour, if that, to fly the length of Britain.
Let's switch to the newsmakers. I see that the Poles were making noises the other day, is that they were worried that Putin might turn his military attention to them in the near future. What's your feeling about that?
Well, I think he's got himself into a stalemate position with Ukraine, and certainly now with the true threat to the Crimea that he occupied in 2014. He's losing control of Crimea quite rapidly, if he hasn't lost it already. And his encroachment into the Donbass, the part of Ukraine that is occupied, that is seriously threatened. So he needs some sort of diversion. Now he can increase the military pressure. Some even talk about him going nuclear, tactical nuclear, not heavy nuclear. Which I think would be a disaster clear disaster if he went down that route. And I think there are other forces in the world that would inhibit him doing that, not the least of which would be China. They'd put the squeeze on him. And so he has to engage in some form of diversionary move. And that diversionary move, yes, could be an attack on Poland. Also with the political afterthought of seeing if it would trigger Article 5, to see if, in fact, NATO would react to an attack on one as an attack on all.
Yeah.
And with the United States backing off from Article 5 fairly openly, I think he would see it would be a means of testing Western resolve. And Western resolve, of course, is not really backed up with any real force. I mean, Britain hasn't got any military clout anymore, can't even put a ship on the ocean, well, barely. So it's quite possible that he would launch some sort of excursion, clouded in, hide it as an accidental excursion initially, misdirected missiles or something hitting key targets in Poland, so that it wasn't a full-scale declaration of war, just as the Ukraine adventure wasn't. It was labeled a special military operation, and is only just now beginning to admit the term war into his vocabulary. So, I think it's highly possible that he needs a diversionary exercise, and it could well be an attack, if not on Poland, on Latvia, or one of the Baltic states, and test the resolve of NATO.
Yeah, I see the other day reports that lines to buy stuff from supermarkets and stores and so on in Moscow have returned. Now, it's interesting because way back in, let's see, it would be 1995 or 96. I was in Moscow when the local markets were still operating because you couldn't get anything in the stores. Then, of course, it started to improve, and the economy improved, and Muscovites actually started to live a better life than us.
Mm.
But if it's going to return to what it was within the living memory of people, do you think that will have a political effect on the Russian scene?
Well, I think Putin is on shaky ground at the moment. And the threat to him is probably internal as much as it is external at the moment. I don't think he still retains a very high level of popularity amongst the people, but if ever he is obliged to go to mass mobilization, and the middle class Russians see their sons and daughters being led off as cannon fodder in some form of foreign adventure, the public will turn against him. But I think the greatest risk he's got is from the people more immediately involved. There's always a gray area behind every government. They're the people who truly do pull the strings. What we referred to a few minutes ago as the establishment. Well, there's an establishment in Russia just as there is in Britain and France or anywhere else. And these people carry tremendous influence. And of course, they're in a position to remove a leader who becomes unpopular. And certainly in a country like Russia, where people tend to suddenly fall out of fifth-story windows and have amazing accidents, he's in a very vulnerable position. And proof of that is that he's surrounded himself with, we're told, with 1,000-strong personal bodyguard, and none of whom are allowed to have functioning mobile phones in case it locates presence. And of course, he's got doubles of himself going around. The guy is becoming paranoid, and the major threat that he faces, I think, will be from internal opposition.
Yes. Let's turn to America for a moment, because Trump was reported as being furious that the Iranians had broken the peace agreement, before it even got started. Is he starting to change his attitude towards foreign affairs, or is it just Donald Trump being personally offended?
Well, I think Trump has lost his marbles. I mean, first time around, his first term of office, he's quite a detestable individual, but at least he had notions of what he was trying to accomplish. But the second time around, and particularly getting involved in the Iran war, which was a very good thing to do. Somebody had to step in and stop them getting the atomic bomb, otherwise they would be throwing it around with the same gay abandon that they're throwing missiles around now. So the reasons for going to war were still very valid, but instead of letting his general staff run the military side of affairs, he's intervened as if he knows the solution to every problem on the planet, and he's screwed it up completely. I mean, the guy is a total walking disaster now, and I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't also accidentally find himself on the edge of a fifth-story window. I don't think he'll I don't think he'll see out his mandate.
How much longer has he got to go?
Well, he's got 2 years to go now. He's halfway through his second term, or coming up to halfway through the second term, the midterms. And I don't see through his mandate. Somebody's going to bump him off. Yeah.
Well, there's America's enemies see this as a weakness, that there will be a change or lack of authority at the top, and now is the time, if they're going to indulge in any adventures, is the time to do it.
No, I think they rejoice in the fact that Trump is in charge, because he is so easily manageable. They can read him like a book, and play him like a fiddle. So no, if they had a much more person in front of them difficult to read, I think they would worry more. But no, he's easily manipulated, Trump, by his friends and by his enemies.
Yeah. Okay, well, we're trotting nicely through the world. Let's stay with America and the Middle East. What's going on there? Because it looks as if Israel is quite intractable. with its enemies around it, and that any suggestion of be nice to them is met with a couple of rockets let off from the Knesset.
Well, a wave of anti-Semitism, which is run across the world at the moment, is really quite amazing, and it's, mind you, it's historically tradition to hate the Jews, and always has been, blame everything wrong on the Jews. People very quickly forget October the 7th, and when Israel went into Gaza to try to put an end to that, which they had almost done when they were stopped by Trump, and then Trump gets them involved in his Iran caper, and then he pulls the rug out from under them. He's pulling the rug out from under them right now with the possible sale of F-35s to Turkey, and which would lead to a less dominant aviation presence in the Middle East by Israel. So they're being sold down the river. And at the same time, very clever enemy propaganda has whipped the storm of anti-Semitism into an international move against Israel. So Israel is in pretty bad shape at the moment, but they'll be seriously considering themselves as to whether they can rely on the United States as an ally, as should anybody. Given the current type of leadership in the United States, I say current type, I don't just mean Trump, I mean the potential of J.D. Vance or Rubio following on next time around. Can you trust the United States as an ally anymore? And so many of these countries will be now seeking to prepare for their own defense, their own futures. A typical example, of course, has been Ukraine itself, when it was starved of the necessary weaponry, intermediate and long-range weaponry that they needed to take the war onto Russian soil. When the Americans wouldn't give it to them, they've developed it themselves. And so they're becoming a force to be reckoned with. And I think the technical skills and technical know-how that the Israelis have, they will try and free themselves of dependency on the United States. And what do I mean by that? They'll start developing seventh-generation fighters and all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't trust the United States farther than I could throw them at the moment.
One of the interesting things about the Donbass region, Harry, is that as you're driving through it, you come around the corner and suddenly you see a MiG jet set in concrete with its nose pointed to the sky.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And under the old regime, that's where they built a lot of the arms. And we were told, on good authority, and I think there's no reason to disbelieve it, that they turned them into sort of, making knives and forks and those sort of things.
Yeah.
But I would have thought that it's very, very simple to turn those factories back to making airplanes and guns and tanks and things again.
Well, if you're talking about Ukraine, that's exactly what they've done. Yeah. And they've also developed a philosophy of deregulating this drive for technical military efficiency, so that anybody can invent whatever sort of new drone or new form of weaponry that they see fit to do, and they can get it approved and into production very, very quickly. Compared to Britain, for instance, if it wanted a new tank, it takes years to develop it, and everybody, it's the old theory that a horse, a camel, they say, and is a horse designed by a committee.
Yes.
and if you translate that into the ability of say the Ukraine and eventually Israel to develop its own systems, they won't need any of these others. They'll be much more efficient, and they'll be the forces to be reckoned with.
Yeah. The countries such as Lithuania Armenia and Azerbaijan and so on, the tension rose considerably when it looked as if Putin was in charge of the war in against Kiev. And now that it's a bit more stalemate, is it noticeable that the tension is beginning to ease in these countries, or are they still on tenterhooks as to what's going to happen?
Oh, I think they're flexing their muscles a little bit. I mean, they're not going to be real forces to be reckoned with in the immediate future. But with Putin having his hands full with Ukraine and other issues, not the least with the Russian economy, which is going down the tubes. They've now rationed petrol to gasoline to a point that they're not exporting it. They're having to keep it for homegrown use at the moment. So their economy is going to be suffering very, very badly in the next 2 or 3 months. Whether they can continue to sustain the war effort is a questionable matter. So in that context, these other countries that were under tremendous Russian pressure will now be having freedom to evolve more independently. Some of them may choose to stay within the Russian orbit, some of them will not. But I think we're seeing a redesigning of the world order. Well, world order, that part of Europe and certainly towards Middle Asia, because they're free to do so.
Right, let's turn to your favorite now, China.
Mm-hmm.
Where are we with the Chinese?
Well, I think China has been just making its progress steadily all along, and they're headed to be the next superpower if they aren't already. They are slowly getting over some of their problems. Their famous demographic problem dating back to the one baby per family period. But they're making tremendous advances technologically in artificial intelligence. Their military, as we know, is building. Their geographic expansion in the South China Sea, transforming sandbars into islands to increase their foothold, their political geographical foothold. The counterbalance to China is very much, I think, India, and to a lesser degree, Japan. But I think it's less and less the United States. The United States will return almost to a Monroe philosophy not getting involved in foreign wars and will eventually withdraw. They'll let Taiwan go. They'll let, as I say, who would want to be an ally of America at this stage in the game? They'll sacrifice Taiwan just to get peace with China. And so China will continue to establish its hegemony, certainly in that part of the world. What will eventually put the brake on China's evolution will, of course, be its own internal political system. Because when dictatorships eventually become so brittle that they break, and it's a cyclical effect. It may take 1 generation, 2 generations, but it will happen. And people will not live under that sort of, under the jackboot forever. People naturally will seek freedom.
What will be the motivator, do you think? I mean, I remember talking to, this has got to be 20 years ago now, but if you recall, it is the official policy of economic policy of the Chinese government was everybody should have a bicycle. And then they changed to everybody should have a car.
Yeah.
And I remember saying to a young Chinese when I was in a free Hong Kong, well, if the government turned around and sort of said, well, we're going to go back to the official policy being everybody having a bicycle, what would your reaction be? And he said, we wouldn't stand for it.
Well, I think that is actually gone way beyond that point. I mean, I don't know whether my figure is correct here, but I understand that there are 3,000 Chinese billionaires. There's a whole huge middle class evolved in China, and upper middle class, and in fact wealthy class. Um, at the moment, they're subordinate to the central political power, and of course, it's a highly controlled society. But these people will not will eventually exercise their newfound strength, and money talks. So that's where it's not going to go back to one bicycle for everybody. I mean, the Chinese are becoming many Chinese are becoming very wealthy people indeed.
Yes. So you think that economic change will be in some ways absorbed rather than be a driver?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, there's still a lot of poor people in China, no question about it, but there's a whole middle class evolving, and in fact, a very wealthy group of people. As I say, I'm not sure whether my figure is correct here, but I've heard about 3,000 Chinese billionaires.
Oh, God.
And by billionaire, it's not just 1 billion, it could be 10 billion or 50
Yes,
billion.
right.
I mean,
Right. Now, you thought that the modifying factor might well be India and to some extent Japan. We'll return to Japan in a moment because I'm quite interested in the Japanese and their fluctuation of fortunes. But where does India stand? Because I spent some time in India, once again, somewhere around, I think, the turn of the century. And I was appalled at its poverty. But it in fact, has become an economic powerhouse, isn't it?
Well, again, you've got this huge middle class that's evolved in China and in India, sorry, and very wealthy people. Again, I'd like to know what the figure of the number of billionaires they've now got, and their policies have been generally fairly benevolent. They have the challenge, of course, of all of the ethnic groups, the religious groups, and what have you, but they're developing a very, very solid economy, and I would say that India, it's going to be India between India and China in the next 100 years.
Do you think that India is going to grow that large and powerful? Do you?
Sure, yes, I do believe. Well, they already have great influence. I mean, look at Indian investment in Britain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's just look at the Japanese economy, because I've always been very almost paternal about the Japanese, because they started from ground zero after the bombing of World War II.
Yes.
And turned themselves into an economic power. And then they reached a pinnacle and started to go downhill. Where are they on the cycle at the moment?
Well, it's they're a little bit different from most other economies. I mean, we read in financial journals that Japan is the most indebted country, industrialized country in the world, but most of that debt is held by the Japanese themselves. In terms of little old ladies and their savings accounts, lending money to the government. So it's in a very strong financial position, even if the government is considerably in debt. So it's a very innovative, and it's got the weight of its population, the momentum weight, which is it's a large population in the same way that Indonesia it represents a large internal market, which gives it a stability, an economic stability, before it even exports a single item of their production. So I think the future of Japan is assured. Certainly, limited, I would think, by the expansion of China. But I have no concerns about Japan's survival and improving its lot all the time.
We moved on rather quickly from the makeup of the old EU. Where are we with Germany and indeed France? Some of the emerging powers like Hungary and Czechoslovakia. What's happening in the broad scope of the EU?
Well, the EU is sliding into oblivion, from what I can see. It's just hamstrung itself with all of its own rules and regulations, and the economic powerhouse that was Germany is barely growing at all. Some nations are actually slipping back, and its proportion that it represents in world trade is half of what it was when it was formed. So I would pretty much write the European Union off. I think its glory days are over, if it ever had any glory days. Which is kind of scary because people like Burnham and Starmer before him were cozying up to Europe as if it was the solution to all of their problems, and I really don't think it is. Europe is a spent force, and there's a rebirth of nationalism in Germany, certainly with the AfD, the right-wing party building power. Nationalism happening in France, as we've seen with Marine Le Pen, Farage in Britain, the rebirth of UKIP in many ways, reform. So I think Europe stays unnumbered, and there's such a dichotomy of viewpoint amongst the leaders that they all get together once a month and shake hands and drink champagne, but beyond that, I don't think there's any true unity, and everybody's busy trying to pull the blanket to their side of the bed at the moment.
Yes, yes. Some of the much vaunted co-production efforts, like the Eurofighter, did that go anywhere?
Well, it's still being developed. It hasn't been ditched yet, but everybody again is trying to get their share of the pie, and the criteria are changing all the time. I mean, the militaries can't agree. It's going to, as I say, it's going to end up a camel, a horse designed by a committee in the long run of things, and I do not think you can get that level of international cooperation to think they share the cost, but the cost overruns become so massive that you would have been better developing it on your own.
Right, Harry. Now you've given us a wonderful analysis as usual. We've been going for 48 minutes, so that gives us a few minutes to turn our attention to the savior of diplomatic international relations, the World Cup.
Ah, yeah. Well, at the moment, of course, all the focus is on this incredible victory by Argentina over Egypt, and where Egypt was penalized for the identical fouls that were carried out by Argentina. I mean, there's no question about it. The judgment, the calls on that were very unfair. Now, whether Egypt's performance was a flash in the pan, or whether there was a need for Argentina, to stay in the cup, because after all, I think they were the previous winners, were they not?
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, and so politically, there's all sorts of factors at play, and and everybody knows that FIFA, or whatever you call it, is a byword for corruption. So I don't doubt for 1 minute that there's a lot of string pulling behind the scenes. I mean, we've just had this incredible intervention by Trump into getting a red card rescinded. I mean, it's getting to be a bit of a joke.
Yes.
It's a good outing for the lads, and if they've got £1,000 to spend on a ticket or more in many cases, well, if that's what gives them their jollies, I'm all for it. But you and I are old rugby types, and
yes, indeed. We should start with the Nations Cup already this last Saturday. But just before we leave the World Cup, I mean, Hitler, for instance, paid great attention to sporting events. The Berlin Olympics of 1937 or
36, yeah.
How influential do you think that this World Cup, which has certainly had a lot of whoop-de-doo and a lot of money? I mean, I just can't believe that they've been asking sort of £1,000 a seat, and the stadiums are absolutely jam-packed. I mean, what sort of influence could it have, or is it having?
Well, it's question of money. I mean, £1,000. I think we're talking in minimal terms there, because I've heard some tickets going for as much as £6,000 or more.
I believe it.
And some of the package deals where they get all the goodies in a special box and all the rest of it, you're talking into millions there. But that's probably corporate sponsorship or people who are extremely wealthy that can afford, that live in that remote world. So, no, money is a big factor. There's no question about it. But is not soccer and therefore its showpiece event, which is the World Cup Championship, is it not a little bit like the decline of the Roman Empire, with Nero putting on daily shows of Christians being eaten by the lions to take entertain the people and take their minds away from their shrinking happiness, or it's got a little bit of a sense of decline to it, that the most important thing in a person's life is if they've got the latest soccer jersey to wear and spend £1,000 on a ticket, they forget their daily worries, you know. So I think there's part of civilizational decline involved in this World Cup.
Well, I mean, it is interesting, because that has crossed my mind that you know, let them eat cake, or give them corn and the games with gladiators bashing one another's brains out.
Yeah.
But anyway, it is what it is, and it is there. What's your prediction, or have you got one?
On the
World Cup.
Well, I think it's a great piece of marketing. It's obviously bringing a lot of happiness and pleasure to people, and why not? It takes their minds off their daily worries, and it gives them something to talk about in the pub. It's in a way it's harmless, but in the worst case scenario, it's escapism, and the people are losing a sense of what really counts in life. And if the whole world comes to an end if their team is defeated, well, it shouldn't.
Yes.
Cheer your team along, but may the best man win. Yes. Should be the important thing.
Any ideas about who the best man might be?
Britain, of course. I shall shoot myself if we don't win. England, I should say, not Britain. England.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I must confess is that I on match days, I go down to the Black Horse, and I have to abandon it because Deck, the landlord, will say, I've had 50 people book the pub. It's sold out entirely. I'm sorry, but your usual seat is gone. You know?
Yeah.
Harry, as usual, a masterful analysis of what's going on in the world, and very helpful to people, I think. Any last thoughts?
Well, just thinking about England. There, it's now 60 odd years since I left England, but I still regard it with a great deal of affection. I've lived and worked, as you have, in many different parts of the world. Um, but I worry that England is on the slippery slope, and taking us back to the beginning of this conversation, I think we really need to get our values back on track, get people back to work, off welfare, get back some old values, and hesitate to say Christian values because I'm not a practicing Christian, but values that are meaningful building blocks to society. And I think we're on the edge of the precipice, and we'll pull back. We always have done, but I think the time is running out, and it's got to happen long before the Labour socialist mandate runs out in 3 years' time. I think we've got to see change in the next few months, and it'll be interesting to see if Burnham has got the measure to do that,
Yes.
or if the British people really want to put their country back on track. If the public will is there, it'll happen. If it isn't, we'll just slide into oblivion.
Yes, yeah. Well, Harry, now that our blog, as it were, is back on track, each week we'll be able to take a look and perhaps get a reading of how the British public is thinking, how our politicians are reacting to it, and what's happening in Westminster. If anybody knows what's happening in Westminster.
Indeed, and I think the pace of change actually is about to quicken. I think we're going to see movement fairly quickly. There's Burnham has a chance. I don't think he's going to grasp it, quite frankly. But he has a chance, and if he's prepared to make some bold moves and counter his own backbenchers, and he's got to do that quickly in the first flush of being in power, then we'll see the direction the country is going to go.
Yeah. Be interesting to see how Farage's move on his resignation works out as well.
Yeah, that's going to play out. It's going to make a lot of, everybody's going to take advantage of what's going to be a little bit of a farce, I guess. But what we do owe to Farage, whether we like him or not, is he has shaken up British politics and has made the British public, many of whom agree with him, that there is a desperate need for change and return to a value-based society. And it's to be hoped that he does weather the storm and continues to pull the country in the right direction. Whether he ends up being prime minister or not is another question. But it's a very essential movement, the reform movement, and it's to be hoped that it's managed to pull the Conservatives back to where they should be, and so that in itself has been a remarkable achievement on the part of Farage.
Yes.
He has created Kemi Badenoch. After all the wishy-washy leaders that the Conservatives have had. So we owe a lot to Nigel Farage. Love him or loathe him, it's been a very powerful and important influence, and I hope he continues to be so.
Yes, I would hope so too. I mean, strange enough, as I think I've mentioned, I met him 2 or 3 times when he was a UKIP, because I was working at Reuters, and I was always invited to some of these inner luncheons that were held that nobody talked about with the Bundesbank and so on and so forth. And he was frequently invited to these things, and nobody realized just how important he was going to be in British politics in those days, of course. But he was an interesting man to chat to.
Yeah. Oh, he's quite a personality, and as I say, he inspires love and hate in equal measure.
Yes. But at least he inspires things, and
exactly, and he inspires change. So I hope he's around for a while yet.
Harry, thank you very much. I will see
You're
you
most
next week.
welcome. Yes, hope to. Yes, all
Good.
being well.
Excellent. Right. Well,
Okay,
good.
Keith.
I hope that the foot mends properly, and I shall look forward to speaking to you then.
With pleasure.
Take
Okay.
care.
Okay, Keith. Bye.
Cheers
Bye
again.
for now. Bye.
Bye.